the true American heroes. The legend of the unseen protector. In the heart of the wild and untamed American wilderness, where the trees whispered ancient secrets and the rivers sang songs of old, a great tale was born. It was a time long before the modern age when the land was filled with mystery and danger. This was the land of the Cherokee, the Shawnee, the Pawnee, and countless other tribes, and it was here that the first of the true American heroes walked the earth, though many had long forgotten his name. He was a figure of legend, known only as the unseen protector, a spirit of the forest who had sworn to protect the land from evil forces that threatened the peaceful inhabitants. The story began in the rolling hills of the Appalachian Mountains, where the air was thick with the scent of pine and the soil was rich with the stories of the ancients. One fateful night, a great storm rolled in from the west. The wind howled like wolves on the hunt, and the rain fell in sheets, pouring down upon the earth as if the heavens themselves wept. But amid the chaos, a young boy named Thomas stood at the edge of a village, staring into the dark forest. His heart beat fast with a mix of fear and excitement. For he had heard the elders speak of a protector, someone who walked the earth in times of great need, a warrior of sorts, whose true form was that of a shadow unseen by mortal eyes. That night, the winds whispered something strange in the trees, something only Thomas could hear. It was a voice, low and rumbling, as if coming from the very heart of the mountain itself. "The storm is but a warning. The darkness comes." With those words ringing in his ears, Thomas felt a surge of bravery. He stepped into the forest, determined to find this protector and uncover the truth behind the legends. For hours he ventured deep into the woods, guided only by the moonlight that flickered through the branches. The air grew colder and the sounds of the forest seemed to grow quieter. It wasn't until the forest gave way to a clearing that he saw it, an ancient stone circle, moss-covered and weathered by centuries of time. In the center of the circle stood a figure, cloaked in shadows, his eyes glowing like embers in the dark. The unseen protector stood before Thomas, his presence both terrifying and comforting. His face was hidden beneath the hood of his cloak, but Thomas could feel the power emanating from him. "You have come to seek answers, young one," the protector said in a voice that seemed to reverberate from the very ground. "But the path you seek is not without its dangers." Thomas nodded, though his heart pounded with both fear and awe. "The storm you hear, the whispers of the wind, they are not just nature's fury," the protector continued. "They are the calling of a force darker than anything you can imagine. The world is not as it seems. Heroes walk among us, but they are often hidden, bound by ancient oaths." Thomas listened closely, understanding the weight of the words. He had heard tales of great warriors, men and women who fought for justice, for peace, and for the survival of the land. But he never imagined that the protector was not of flesh and blood, but of spirit. "Who are you?" Thomas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am the one who walks unseen," the protector replied. "I am the guardian of this land, the hero who has fought in silence for generations. But my time is fading. I will soon be gone, and it will be up to those who remember to carry the legacy forward." Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the trees, followed by a roar that shook the very earth beneath them. The protector's eyes narrowed and he stepped forward, his cloak swirling around him like a storm. "The darkness has arrived," he murmured, "and it is time for you to learn what it means to be a true hero." Before Thomas could ask another question, the trees around them parted, revealing a beast, a massive, shadowy creature, its eyes glowing with malice. The creature was a terror of the wilderness, a creature that had long been a part of the land's dark history. "Face this creature, young one," the protector said, "and prove that you are worthy of the title of hero." Thomas's heart raced as he watched the beast approach, its massive form blocking out the light of the moon. But he was no longer afraid. In the presence of the unseen protector, something deep within him stirred, an ancient power, one that had been waiting for this very moment. He gripped the knife at his belt, a tool handed down by his father. It was not much, but it was all he had. He stepped forward, his hands steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "Do not falter," the protector warned. "True heroes are not born from strength alone. They are born from courage, from the willingness to face the darkness when all hope seems lost." With that, the battle began. The creature lunged, its massive claws slashing through the air. But Thomas moved with the grace of someone who had been trained by the land itself. He dodged the creature's attack, using the blade to strike at its side. The battle raged on, the air thick with the sounds of growling and the clash of steel. As the battle reached its peak, the unseen protector stood by, watching closely. He knew that this was more than just a battle for survival. It was a test of Thomas's heart, his willingness to rise above fear and doubt. In the end, it was Thomas who prevailed. With a final, well-placed strike, he felled the creature, its dark form crumbling to the ground. The storm that had raged around them began to subside, and the forest fell into a deep silence. The protector approached Thomas, his eyes glowing brighter than ever. "You have proven yourself, young hero. But this is just the beginning." The legacy of the protector. As the silence settled over the forest, Thomas stood panting, his heart still racing from the fierce battle. The creature, once a terror of the land, now lay motionless at his feet, its monstrous form slowly dissolving into the earth, as if it had never existed at all. The wind, which had howled in fury only moments ago, now calmed, carrying the sweet scent of pine and earth. The storm that had once threatened the village was gone, leaving behind only the stillness of a quiet night. The unseen protector, cloaked in shadows, stood silently beside Thomas, watching him with the glowing eyes that now seemed less like embers and more like the full radiance of 1,000 stars. "You have done well, young hero," the protector said, his voice both somber and proud. "But the battle you fought tonight is just a small part of the story. You have proven your courage, but the path you now walk is one fraught with more than just beasts and monsters. The true fight is not against creatures of darkness, it is a fight for the heart and soul of this land." Thomas nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. He could still feel the weight of the protector's gaze upon him, as if the very essence of the land itself was watching, waiting for him to understand. "The world is changing," the protector continued, his voice growing more urgent. "The darkness you faced tonight was merely a harbinger of greater things to come. Forces beyond the natural world stir, and they seek to consume the land, to erase the traditions, the stories, and the very spirit of the people who call it home." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. The battle had been fierce, but the protector's words were heavier than any physical enemy he had ever faced. The land was not just a place, it was a living, breathing entity full of history, power, and spirit. And now, something threatened to destroy it all. "I don't understand," Thomas admitted, looking up at the protector, his voice shaky. "What is it that I must do?" The protector stepped closer, his shadowy form casting a long, dark silhouette over the ground. "You must become the guardian, Thomas. You must protect not only the land and its people but also the very essence of its stories. The legends that have been passed down for generations must not be forgotten. They must be kept alive, for they are the foundation upon which this land stands. Without them, without the truth of these heroes and their deeds, the land will wither and die." "But I'm just a boy," Thomas protested, his voice full of doubt. "How can I possibly carry such a responsibility?" The protector smiled, though it was a smile filled with sadness and wisdom. "Every hero was once just a child, Thomas. The greatest heroes in history, the ones whose names echo through the ages, were not born with power. They were made by the choices they made, the courage they showed, and the stories they lived. You have the heart of a hero. You have proven that." Before Thomas could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The earth seemed to shift as if it were waking up from a long slumber. From the depths of the forest, a low rumble began to rise, and the air grew thick with the weight of ancient power. A new threat was approaching, one that was more insidious than the creature Thomas had just defeated. This threat was not flesh and blood, it was a force of memory and time, of forgotten legends and lost traditions. The protector turned sharply, his eyes flashing with a sudden intensity. "The darkness is coming, Thomas. It is not just a creature but a force that seeks to erase the past, to make the land forget. You must stop it before it spreads, or all that we have fought for will be lost." The rumbling grew louder, and the trees began to sway, as if bending under the weight of an invisible force. The protector's cloak billowed in the wind, but there was no sign of the creature, no beast to fight, no monster to defeat. Instead, there was only the feeling of something ancient, something forgotten, stirring in the distance. "We must go," the protector said, his voice urgent. "Follow me, Thomas. We must reach the heart of the land." Without waiting for a response, the protector turned and began to move swiftly through the trees, his shadowy form darting between the trunks. Thomas, heart pounding, followed closely behind, unsure of what lay ahead but knowing that he had no choice but to follow. They traveled for what seemed like hours, deeper into the forest, until the trees began to thin, and the ground became rocky and uneven. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay, and the atmosphere felt heavy, as though the very sky itself was holding its breath. Finally, they reached a clearing, one that was unlike any Thomas had ever seen. It was a place of ancient power, a place where the land itself seemed to pulse with life. In the center of the clearing stood an immense stone, covered in moss and runes, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "This is the heart of the land," the protector said, his voice softer now. "This is where all life on this land begins. It is the source of all the stories, the myths, the legends. And it is here that the darkness will strike." Thomas stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the stone. It seemed to hum with a deep, resonating power, and as he approached it, he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows, chilling and distant, yet filled with ancient malice. "You cannot stop what is coming. The stories will fade. The heroes will be forgotten." The protector stepped in front of Thomas, his form radiating with a fierce light. "We shall see," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "For the true American heroes will never fade. Not while there are those who remember." And with that, the battle began. The fight between light and darkness was about to begin in earnest, and Thomas knew that his journey had only just begun. The legacy of the protector and the fate of the land rested in his hands.